Okay, now let's go ahead and continue to question number 2. Now what you're going to realize in question number 2, it says the graph below shows the relationship between the production of rate of an oil well after it's reached its peak production rate and the number of years the well is kept in production. As you can see, this is a declining exponential graph, and when you hear the word relationship, basically means that there is an x and y values that are going to be produced. So we're going to be looking at the x-axis and the y-axis, and importantly we're going to be looking at the labels. What are the labels? Labels are these: quantity of oil barrels and time in years. So when you look at what it says here, the question goes like this: according to this graph, about how many barrels of oil were produced at, correction on the review, 2.5 years. So important thing to keep in mind, see which way they scale it, because our tendency, the way we look at this, when you see 2 and 4, a lot of times you think that this is 2.5. But since it's scaled by ones, 2.5 is actually right in between 2 and 3. And when you go up to see where it falls on, as you can see, it falls at 3,000 barrels. So this is more of just identifying, and a lot of times we just have a tendency, because since 3 falls on a grid line, a lot of times we're accustomed to look at values there. But again, don't be fooled, this is 2.5. Okay, now let's go ahead and switch to question number 3. Okay, on question number 3, it says right here, which of the following mappings best represents function f of x equal to x squared plus 4? Now, what does this all mean? Really, the most important thing you have to know about this, when you see this value, f of x, really this means y. So when you see the rest of the mappings, this means y, this means y, this means y, and this means y. Now, apart from that, each value, each one in here represents an x value. The arrows indicate its pair. For example, -2 goes with 2 because of the arrow. 0 goes with 4 because of the arrow. And so on and so on and so on. This one, as you can see how the 3 goes up to the arrow 13? This one says its pair is 3, 13. Same thing here, 1, 0. Now, the strategy you want to take on this one is bring out your calculator. Type in y equals. Now, you may want to clear your calculator, 7 plus 712. But when you go ahead and you type in y equals, you're able to type in the formula x squared plus 4, bring up the table. So hit the yellow button, graph, and then look for the point. So remember, the biggest thing you want to do is not guess, and you make sure of that by just making sure that each one. So you see how it says -2 should go to 2. This one says -2 goes to 8. So this right here is automatically not an answer. Okay, let's go on with B. Now it says I should go -3, 13. So that one so far passes. 0 to 4, that one too. 1 to 5, that one does as well. And then finally 3 and 13. So that means that since I made sure that all of these match up correctly, this is a correct answer. And if you want to just be certain, you can check the other ones, but I'm almost sure, I will guarantee you that one of these is going to have an error. Now let's go to question number 4. Now question number 4 talks about rate of change. What you have to remember about rate of change, the AKA, is slope. And to find slope, you have to find rise over run, which means that when you look at each of these lines, we're going to see what's the decrease in the y compared to the x. So first thing you want to do is pick out 2 dots. Now what's important about picking out your dots is you got to make sure that the line crosses right on top on a grid line intersection. What's a grid line intersection? When these grid lines meet. So like it meets here and it meets there. Now what do you do after that? You draw like a one-step staircase and you identify, okay, if you go down, this is -2. If you go to the right, this is 5. So using the idea of rise over run, you will notice that it's -2 over 5, the answer to this. Now you use the same tactic over here, and you realize that in this case where I picked out my dots, I'll have 1 over 3. So your answer to this one will be 1 over 3. Okay, now moving on to this one. Okay, when you get to this one, first of all, when you hear the word inequality, you're going to be presented with what was taught to you as one of these alligator mouths. That means that there's a difference between the numbers or the solutions. And if you remember left hand and right hand, okay, they kind of make the shape of that inequality. And the nice thing to keep in mind is that when you look at your left hand, when you see this one, most of the time the variables are going to be arranged and where this means less. And you know how L has a left has an L in your name? It's a way to remember that. And right hand normally means greater than. Now, to find out the exactly inequality, you still need to find out what this line is, because the equation of this line will tell you the border. Now, do you all notice how everything is shaded below the line? Below the line means less than. So less than, again, will have this quantity. So your first inequality move is going to be like this. You're going to have this kind of symbol. Now, I'm going to draw a line underneath. The reason why I draw this line is because you see how this line is solid? That means that this line contains solutions, meaning that it's included. And that's important because now you're able to tell it that, hey, not only can the solutions be everything below, but also on top. Now, the equation of slope-intercept forms y is equal to mx plus b. Slope in my case, I'm going to, well, the easier thing to find is the y-intercept, which is this b value, because all you have to do is look at the y-axis and just see where the line crosses. You see how it crosses the -2? So you're going to put a -2 here. Now the only thing that's unknown is what is my m, what goes here. And that is easily found by picking out the 2 points and doing rise over run. So -1 over 3. -1 over 3. And here is your equation to that. Now moving on to question number 6. Now in question number 6, it says right here, if x comma 1.4 is the solution to the equation 3x minus 5y is equal to 20, what is the value of x? Here's the most important part. Now, it's not given to you. If you notice, what you're given from here is that this is y. Because remember, an ordered pair is always written in this format. So if a number's placed in its place, that means you know that y is equal to 1.4. Now, we use this information to our advantage because we want to get down to the solution by placing that in here and then solving for x. So we do this, 3x minus 5, and instead of writing y, we write 1.4. You multiply. What is -5 times 1.4? You realize it's -7. It's equal to 20. And now from here we start solving for x. A good thing to do when you're solving for x is cover it with your finger, because it becomes easy to see what you got to do. You got to get rid of this -7. And we do that by just doing its additive inverse, which is its opposite. This cancels, and it gives us this important next step. Now, when you get to this spot, you notice you got 3x's is equal to 27. I don't want 3. I just want 1. So you divide the 3 to both sides. And you identify that x, the solution, is 9. Moving on to question number 7. Now, in question number 7 it says, which best describes the range represented by the graph? Range just means y. It's important to know this, just because sometimes when you're given answer solutions, you'll be getting sometimes x. This one has all y values in it, but at times they place x values in here, and they put an x, and that's kind of designed to possibly test you. So what you want to make sure is you know that range means y, and then you know to look at the y-axis, because all it's really asking for is that where do the points exist. Now, one of the things you're going to realize that there's no points that exist anything above here. And then you make a determination, does it exist anywhere? Is there anywhere else I could tell that it doesn't exist? And a lot of people see, since they see arrows here, and since they see the graph that ends there, they kind of think, well, it also ends here. But that's not true. These arrows represent that they go on forever. So it's important to realize that this is not you can't set a boundary point here. It's all the values, as you notice, below this line, so less than 3. Again, left hand symbol, you'll be thinking about the symbol. So when you look at these here, this is the only one that tells that it's everything below 3. So that's how you get to the answer in that. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the next question. This question here. It says, which of the following expressions is equal to the area of the shaded region in the square units of the diagram below? Now, if I ever ask you this question, I had just given you numbers. Most students will say, Mr. Sandoval, this is easy to find out, because all you have to do is find the area of the shade of the big triangle and subtract the area of the white triangle away from it, and then you'll find the area of the shaded region. And you are right. You're absolutely right about that. So to get to our solution, first of all, we run into the situation where we have a binomial multiplied by a binomial. So what you're going to do in this case is, in order to do it correctly, you got to draw a 2 by 2 box to fit your binomials in. 5n negative 2 here, and m plus 1 here. M times 5m is 5m squared. M times negative 2, negative 2m. 1 times 5m, 5m. 1 times negative 2, negative 2. We add the two values in the middle. Now, the reason why I circle those are the only two that are alike. If you notice, this one has an m squared and this one has just a number. They're not the same. So you end up with this solution to it, and then you draw a 1 by 2 box over here, and you put m here and 2m plus 1. What's important to keep in mind is that you only have one. This is not a binomial, this is a monomial, and it's only represented, you only need one box to represent that. So when you multiply these, you get this 2m squared and m. And again, what we're going to do is we're going to subtract these values away from this. So when I grab this 2m squared, I'm going to put it as a negative 2m squared. When I grab this m, I'm going to put it as a negative m. And then I go ahead and see what the subtraction is. 5m squared minus 2m squared is 3m squared. 3m minus m is 2m, and you have negative 2 here. And there's your answer. Now, let's go on to the next question. It says right here, Mrs. Foss asked her students to identify the domain and range represented by the function graph. Which of the following students' responses is correct? Well, when you see this graph, the first thing you want to do is box it off, so you can tell yourself what the boundaries are. And remember how we just had stated previously that domain means x and range means y? You're going to look at the x values and kind of see. Now I'm drawing this because it makes it very sure that you understand what is not included. What do you not want to put down? That x doesn't exist. Like, you never want everything that you see that I'm shading off, that graph does not exist. Now, when I look at this value, you see how this is the lowest x value on my x-axis? That tells me my lowest point, which is negative 4. And then I look over here, you see how this says 4 is my highest? That's plus on the right side. The lowest will always go on the left, and the highest will always go on the right. Now, x is important to write down. And we're going to say it's everything bigger than negative 4. Now you notice how I have a dot here? That means that that's included. So you will have one of these symbols. You see how this circle's open? That means that at 4, it's not included. And you notice how there's no line there to represent that. It is everything below 4, just not 4. Now let's look at the range. Lowest value is negative 2. Highest value is 2. Y in the middle. You look at negative 2, notice how it's included, the solid dots there. So there will be a line indicating that. And when you get to 2, you notice how it's open. That will be also indicated in your range, so you could tell whoever looks at your graph, this is where and where it goes. Okay, now let's go on to the next one. Okay, when it says right here, it says the table shows the various x and y values, and it gives you a table of values. And it says which equation best describes the relationship between x and y. There's two ways to do this. Easiest way I will show you is by stat calc. Now, I'll go ahead and work out stat edit, stat calc in the calculator. First thing you're going to hit, the most important thing is to remember the name, because in the name it'll tell you the 2 steps that you got to do in order to do this correctly. Stat edit is the first step, and then stat calc is the second step. Let me demonstrate the first step. Stat edit. You enter the x values. See where it says L1? All the x values will go in here. So you type in -5, -2, 4, and 6. Tab over to L2. L2 is the y values. -17, -11, 1, and 5. And then from here, here's the second step. That's why the name's stat edit. We just did that. Here comes the stat calc part. Stat, see how it says calc here? You'll tab over to the right to get to this menu. And since this all are linear equations, you're going to be going to number 4, type in linear. Hit enter. Notice how it gives you y is equal to ax plus b. The a is 2 and the b is -7. So your answer on this one is D. And that's the easiest way to do it. Okay. We will be skipping over question 11 and we'll be moving directly to question 12. Okay. This question states this: if the slope of the function y equals -3/4 x plus 3 is changed to -3/2, which of the following best describes the graph of the new function? Easiest thing to do is just to graph them in your calculator, and then it's easy to see what's going on. Hit y, go to -3 divided by 4 x plus 3, put that in there, and let's go to the next one. And now since it says slope is changed, what's important to remember that this is slope. It's the one next to the x. You type in -3 divided by 2x, and that's the only thing that's changed, so you still will write down the plus 3 next to there. Now let's hit graph. Here's the first line, our original equation. Here's our new line, our new equation. Now it becomes easy to see what is going on. Now let's see what it asks us, and we'll see what is true and what's false. The graph of the new function intercepts the x-axis at the same point as the original function. Well, as you can see, this is the x-axis. That's false. 2 different points it intersects. That's not true. The graph of the new function intercepts the original function on the y-axis. Well, let's look at the y-axis. Here's the old function. It intercepts here. And the new function does intercept in the same location. That's true. So this is my answer choice. You probably could look at the next ones, but these 2 are going to be false. Now let's go ahead and look at the next one. It says right here, the tank of the car below shows the relationship between the gas remaining in the gas tank of a car on a certain amount of miles traveled during the trip to Houston. Again, relationship means you're going to be looking at the x and y axis. In this case, gas remaining, distance traveled. And it says, which of the following best describes the situation? The car had 20 gallons of gas at the beginning of the trip. Well, the beginning of the trip is 0. Let's go see if that's true. Now notice, you see how the line starts here? That's false. This line did not start at 20, otherwise the line will be up here. So that means that this is not true. Let's move on to the next question. The amount of gas in the tank increases 1 gallon for every 15 miles. Well, I don't know about you, but you notice how this line is going down? That means that it's counterintuitive. Gas does not get added on every time you travel, it gets consumed. So this is false for that reason, and the graph shows that as well. Now I want to go to this next question, because this is a common mistake chosen as an answer. The gas tank is empty after 165 miles of driving. A lot of people say that that's true, because remember, each of these represent 15 miles. Notice how this is 165 and how there's nothing traveled anymore after this. It gives you the impression that that might be a true statement, but it's not. This person has roughly a little bit less than 8 gallons, probably 7 gallons left in his tank when he stops at 165,000 miles. So this is not true. He doesn't run out of gas. Now, this is the correct answer. The amount of gas in the tank decreases 1 gallon for every 15 miles. Yes, that's true. Because as you can notice how it went down 2 gallons for 30. So if you do rise over run, 30 over 2 is 15 miles for every gallon. That's correct statement. Now let's go ahead and move on to the next one. Now this one right here says, the graph below shows the amount of heat of energy required to raise the temperature of 5 kilograms of water by various amounts. So if you notice, this is temperature, this is energy input. Currently it takes about 10 input energies of kilocalories to raise it 2 degrees. It says, how would the graph change if the rising temperature of 1 degree is required by 10 kilograms input of energy? It really means this. You go to 1, means it takes 10. So if this is true throughout, that means that to get to 20 you'll need 2. You need 20 kilograms of input. So it's going to start forming this new line that you see here. Now, as you draw your line, you will be able to make a determination. It says the y value of the y-intercept would increase. No, that still stays the same. This is false. The y value of the y-intercept would decrease. It still stays the same. That's false. The line will be less steep because the slope is smaller. Yes. Notice how it's less steep. The slope is smaller on this one. Okay. Now we'll skip over number 15 and let's go ahead and move on to number 16. This is right here. If the slope of the equation y equals negative 3 halves x plus 6 is multiplied by negative 3 and the y-intercept is changed to 0, negative 2, which statement best describes the situation? Really, when it tells you about changing a line, it's going to give you a new line. So first, let's go ahead and find out what is the new slope. This is what you do. You take the old slope and multiply it by what they tell you they want you to multiply by. So in our case, negative 2 divided by 3 was my old slope, because it's the one next to the x. And I'm going to multiply that by negative 3. So my new slope will be 2x. And you see how it says right here the y-intercept's changed to negative 2? Here's my b value. So here's my new equation. So what do? We input both equations back in here. Let's type in negative 2 divided by 3x plus 6. And now let's go over here and now do 2x minus 2. And now let's hit graph and let's see what happens. Here's the old line, here's the new line. Now, let's go ahead and see what answer choices might be possible items to describe this. The new line is steeper than the original line and the y-intercept remains the same. Well, that's a false. It is steeper, as you can notice, but notice how the y-intercept's in different location. Y-intercept happens on the y-axis, and they're in different locations. The new line is less steep than the original line and the y-intercept remains the same. Again, false, because the y-intercept remains the same. Not an answer choice. The new line is steeper than the original line and the lines intersect at 3, 4. Well, now that just becomes, does this intersect at 3, 4? And it looks like it does. If you go to the table, you could verify that. Go to 3. Notice how both points say 4 and 4. That means that it does cross at that point. So you have C as the actual answer on this. Let's move on to the next one. Now it says right here, which table set best describes the points in the line graph below? This is an easy question. The only thing you have to do is look at each table set and remember, don't guess. And what I mean by don't guessing, that means that you go through each one until you verify each one and see that it's actually on the line. So like the first one, negative 1, negative 9, 8, good. Negative 7, 4, not good anymore. I'm not guessing. I'm just making sure that it's there. Let's look at the next one. Negative 2, 4.5. Okay, there. 0, 3. No, not it anymore. It fails at 0, 3. Let's look at the C. Negative 5, 6, negative 1, 4, 3, 2, 5, 1, 7, 0. Here's your answer. Matches. Let's go on to number 18. Okay. Now this one says, which graph best describes the function below? Easiest thing to do here is graph this in your calculator. Go to y equals, type this in, and just bring up the table. Just like what we did before in the last question, all we're going to do is see which of these matches up with this table. So let's take a look at one. -3, see how it says right here -3, 2? Let's look for -3, 2 first. Okay, this is -3, 1. It can't be A. -3, 2 can't be B, C. -3, 2 can't be B. It's going to probably be D. -3, 2 here. Let's use another one just to verify. 2, 4. Good. This is the right answer. Again, done by just verifying. Okay, let's move on to question number 19. Okay. Now it says right here, the graph below shows the value of a personal computer over a 60-month period. So, and we're given two labels, time and value of dollars. Now let's read each of the statements, and it says right here, which of the following interpretation of the graph is true? The personal computer originally cost $1,600. That's true so far, and decreased in value $400 every year. Well, let's look at 1 year. Decreased, not $400 of value. This is false because if you notice at 1 year, it did not decrease that far out. So that's not right. Now let's look at the next question. The personal computer originally cost $1,600. That's true, and decreased in value $400 every 18 months. So $1,600. Let's look at 18 months and see how far it went down. Now that's a true statement. And if you want, you could check the other ones, but they're probably false because like the increase, this one's false because the personal computer did cost $1,600, but it didn't increase. It decreased. The personal computer originally cost $600 and decreased in value $400 every way. We said that it's still false. So there's your answers. Move on to question number 20. Now this one says, given the system of linear equations, this one and this one, what is the solution? Okay, easiest way to do this, convert both to y equals, because then you can graph both and see where they intersect. How do you move? You got to move this one over here. So this is what you do. -3x, to cancel that out, -3x here. This now goes away. It's no longer part of what we need. And we achieve our goal of having everything in y equals, which gives us the important step of being able to graph everything and come up with the actual solution. So here's my first equation. Here's my second equation. So graph and see where they intersect. Intersection happens right here. Now what do? Bring up the table. It's going to be somewhere in the positive values, and there it is. How do you know it's here? Because look, you notice how both y values are the same? It means that you have the same point. That's where the intersection occurs. So the answer on this one, it's going to be 3, -3. Okay, now let's go ahead and read the next question. It says, Egbert is learning how to fly a small plane. In order to get a flying permit, he must train several hours with an instructor and do the rest of his training hours in the flight simulator. Egbert has been informed that he must spend 50 hours in training, and he has only a budget of $3,496 to spend on this training. Also, if the flight school that he is attending charges $98 per hour with instructor and $46 per hour on the flight simulator, how many hours should he spend on each type of training? Well, here's two totals. First of all, we have a money total, and then we also have, this is a total, and here's a total. We have a money total, $3,496, and we have an hour total, 50 hours. And we have two types of hours of training that he could do. Now, we have a variable. We don't know how many hours he could spend at doing flight simulator. Okay, so we have X is a flight simulator, and Y is the instructor. Now, what is instructor? What's important to know? It's important that you write down both down. because both of these hours, no matter added, need to equal 50 hours. Now, how much, do you see how this is a money total? This is where you place how much money he's going to be spending. So like in this case, he will be doing, if we did a flight simulator, which we stated here, that means that's 46x plus $98 y. And now we have a system of equations. Now, you notice how both of the variables, I forgot my y here, both of my variables on the left hand side of this equals. The easiest thing to do here is a matrix. And what do we do as a matrix? It's easy. All you have to go is into the matrix menu and input this data. You see where it says right here, matrix, right above the x equals -1? I'm going to hit the yellow button, and then this one where it says matrix, and it'll give me, and I'm going to go ahead and go to the edit, matrix edit, hit enter, and you type in 2 by 2 because that's my equation. Oh, I'm sorry, 2 by 3. And you type in the values. You type in just the numbers, 46, enter, 98, enter, 3496, enter. And then these have, they're not present, but those are 1 and 1 and 50. Now what do we do after that? Okay, you're going to have to exit out of this menu, so you have to hit second mode to quit. You go back into the matrix menu, you go to math, you tab over to the math section, and you're going to go over, you're going to hit alpha abs, because hitting alpha abs, which basically will give you this command that we need in order for it to tell me what is the actual solution. Now what do you do after that? Go back into the matrix. See how it's stored under that? You bring that up and hit enter, and there's my solution. It says right here I should spend 27 hours as in the flight simulator and 23 hours with instructors to complete both my goals. And that's how you get down to the answer on this one. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, now this one says, which of the following quadratic equation has the solution -3 and 7? Now you notice how you're given all the quadratic equations here? The easiest way to solve this is use your calculator. Bring each one of them up in your calculator and see where they cross. A solution is another name for a root, an x-intercept, or 0. So it's easy just to go ahead. Now when you type this in, you're going to type it in without the 0. You just type in the equation, x squared minus 4x plus 21. Go ahead and hit graph. As you can notice, nothing comes up. This one has no solution, not a passable answer. Let's type in the next one. X squared minus 4x minus 7. Hit graph. Okay, here's two solutions, but you notice how one of them is at -1 and the other one is at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Doesn't match. Not a solution. Let's go to y equals. Type in x squared minus 4x minus 21. Hit graph. Now this one looks like it's our solution because look, you have -3, which is here, and the other one is 7, which is here. So here's my solution. Now let's look at this next one. Which statement is not true about the graph below? When you hear the word not true, circle it, because now we're going to look for the one that's false. The graph has an x-intercept of -3, 0. That's true. That's not one of our answer solutions. Remember, we're looking for false. The graph has a minimum of 1, -8. That's true. Not an answer choice. The y-intercept is at 0, -7.5. Yes, that's true. Not an answer choice. The line of symmetry is in the y-axis. That's false. The line of symmetry is not located here. This does not cut down the parabola in half. This part of it does. This is the line of symmetry here. This cuts the parabola in half. So this is false. This is the answer we're looking for. Now let's go ahead and move over to the back on this. Okay. Now it says right here, Jacob challenges Edward to a walking race. Because Jacob thinks he walks faster than Edward, he gives him a 3-meter head start. Edward walks at a pace of 1.5 meters per second, while Jacob walks at a steady pace of 2 meters per second. At this pace, after how many seconds will Jacob catch up to Edward? Well, let's go ahead and write equations for both. We have Edward, we have Jacob. Now, Edward's given a 3-meter head start, so that's a flat amount. And then he walks at 1.5 meters per second. The word per means that that's your rate of change, which means that that goes there. Now, for Jacob, he's not given any head start, so he'll be at 0. And he walks at 2 meters per second. So really his equation is just y equal to 2x. Now, let's go ahead and find out where they meet. So again, we bring up a calculator, and then on here, let's type in 3 plus 1.5x and 2x. Let's hit graph, and we'll see where they meet. So that's Edward, and Jacob does catch up to him. Now to find out where they catch up, we got to bring up the table, and you can see the values here. And he catches up at 6. See how it says 12, 12? That's where he catches up. So after x is 6 seconds. So it takes 6 seconds to catch him. And when you write this in, all you got to do is put in 6. Don't need to place a positive unless you want to. It's assumed to be positive. And you fill in the 6. Okay. Now let's go to question number 25. It says a function in the form y equals to ax squared plus bx plus c is shown below. Y is equal to 3/4 x squared plus x minus 2. It says when x is equal to 8 and the value seen in the function is multiplied by 5, what will be the y value? Well, here's 2 parts. It's given the 2 instructions. Let's do this first one right here, because this is our c value. Notice how this last value is our c value. We're going to multiply that by 5 first before we enter our x. So this becomes y equals to 3/4 x squared plus x negative 2 times 5 is equal to negative 10. This is negative 10. Now, let's go ahead and put in now our value for x. So we're going to use our calculator. I'm going to type in 3 divided by 4, 8 squared plus 8 minus 10. Hit enter. There's our value, 46. So our value is 46, and we answer our solution. So we're going to put 46 here and fill in 46. Thank you for looking at this video, and good luck on the test. Thank you.